China is outraged by a Taiwanese video game. Unexpected side effects to Chinese genetically engineered babies. And facial recognition technology. It's not just for humans anymore. That and more on this week's China News Headlines. This is China Uncensored. I'm Chris Chappell. Subscribe to our YouTube channel for the latest China news and click the notification bell so you get an alert each time we publish a new episode. This week's China News Headlines. A video game is causing tensions between China and Taiwan to get even more tense. This is Devotion, a Taiwanese psychological horror game. You can tell it's really scary because you have to do math. It's set in the 1980s in a creepy, rundown apartment of a family of religious devotees, and you need to figure out what happened. Speaking of figuring out what happened, people were trying to figure out why the game suddenly disappeared on Steam. That's a website where you can buy video games. It has to do with an ancient curse. The ancient curse being China's plans to take over Taiwan, by force if necessary. You see, sharp-eyed Chinese gamers spotted this. Spooky, eh? It's called a Fulu talisman. Taoist priests would draw talismans to ward off evil spirits or give instructions to spirits. This one is a curse spell. In traditional Chinese culture, this is considered very evil. It's the equivalent of stabbing a voodoo doll. And this one has written on it, Xi Jinping, Winnie the Pooh, moron. Chinese players were not happy. If you don't know, Xi Jinping has often been compared with the lovable Pooh Bear, which oddly makes Xi Jinping not happy. So Chinese players responded by flooding the game's page with thousands of negative reviews, and then at some point it was taken down from Steam. By the way, Valve, the parent company of Steam, is trying to open a local Chinese version. Though apparently Chinese netizens aren't happy about it. They can already access the global version of Steam with the VPN, and they're concerned that if there's a separate Chinese version of Steam, it would have all the good games censored. Really? Well, anyway, after the Devotion game disappeared from Steam, the company that made it wrote an apology. And they said the game was pulled because of technical issues. Well, I guess in a sense that's true, since this did cause the game to crash and burn. Now, Red Candle Games is creating a patch that will remove the cursed talisman. But there's another problem. Chinese players have downloaded a pirated version of Devotion that couldn't be patched and still continues to offend Chinese users. LOL. So yes, US warships just recently sailed through the Strait of Taiwan. But it's a video game that's really upsetting cross-strait relations. But the youth of China might have a bigger problem to worry about. Internet censorship. Of themselves, not of others. This year alone, WeChat has blocked more than 40,000 accounts. Pretty good for only 2 months. And a new target is Song culture. According to Tech in Asia, it loosely translates to funeral or mourning, but it can also mean hopeless or dispirited. Working 12 hours a day at a job that won't even cover rent in Beijing? That's Song. Weibo has also blocked accounts that peddle anxiety. So don't look to these web platforms as outlets for your existential angst anymore, Chinese millennials, because you can't have Communist Party spirit if you're so sad. Not to worry though, teenage angst will soon be a thing of the past in China, because, well, teenagers may also become a thing of the past. Birth rates in China are falling, like a lot. Even though the Communist Party ended the one-child policy by implementing a slightly more liberal two-child policy, there were 15.23 million new births in 2018, down by more than 11% from the year before. And the downward trend has been going on for a couple of years now. In fact, birth rates started dropping in the 1960s, well before the one-child policy even started. So, why was the one-child policy necessary in the first place? Good question. China's overall population growth is slowing, but it hasn't yet started to actually shrink. But China is rapidly becoming a country of old people, as birth rates go down and life expectancy goes up. Now to be fair, old Chinese people can be amazing. But they're also not necessarily economically productive, especially when a lot of jobs, like farming or factory work, are physically demanding. So this puts more of a burden on those young people who do the work. And according to the New York Times, should China increase welfare benefits in line with high-income countries, a stated aspiration of the Chinese leadership, welfare benefits could take up to 32% of the gross domestic product by 2050. But hey, it's the same Communist Party that felt just fine with a one-child policy that resulted in hundreds of millions of abortions. So I'm sure they could solve the problem of too many elderly people with a brand new snack food that's truly of the people. Soylent Red. One more reason not to eat food that's made in China. So, birth rates are down, but there's been a dramatic increase in the number of genetically engineered super babies. There were 0 a year ago, and now there are 2. In November, a Chinese scientist announced he had successfully created GMO babies, which was very against the rules, according to Chinese authorities. The scientist behind the experiment, He Jinping, deleted a gene in the fetus's DNA, and in doing so, he may have granted the twins immunity to HIV. But there could be another upside too. According to this MIT technology review, this may have also enhanced their brains. New research seems to show that removing that gene not only makes mice smarter, but also improves stroke recovery in humans and has been linked to success in school. So the genetically modified twins will do better in school because part of their DNA was removed? I feel bad for all their schoolmates whose parents will ask them why they didn't have their genes illegally edited to be smarter. In other tech news, the Chinese Communist Party has created an unparalleled surveillance state, complete with AI facial recognition technology. So that's done. What's next? Turn it on the pigs. That's not a slur, I'm being serious. Yes, China is creating a database of every pig's face. Supposedly, it's to fight swine flu. China has been hit hard by it. So by mapping pigs' faces and installing voice recognition software, no more swine flu. Wait, I feel like there's a step missing somewhere. Supposedly the idea is you'll be able to predict if a pig is getting sick, and there are several Chinese companies working on the technology. But a lot of Chinese farmers are skeptical that this technology could even work, saying it won't happen until pigs can fly, which has prompted another Chinese tech company to work on a cutting-edge pig aviation app. Speaking of flying pigs, Chinese telecom company Huawei has been on a PR tear, trying to convince other countries that Huawei is a private company that has nothing to do with the Chinese government.
Have you ever given any information to the Chinese government in any way, shape, or form?
For the past 30 years, we have never done that, and the next 30 years to come, we will never do that.
And then, my favorite state-run media, the Global Times, tweeted what looks like a propaganda video of children singing about how much they love Huawei. And then Huawei came out with the statement that this video was done independently by Chinese netizens who just really love the company. Because Huawei is a totally private company that has nothing to do with the Chinese government. And finally, relations between China and Canada may not be so hot after Canada detained Huawei CFO Meng Wanzhou. But things are at least warming up a bit, now that China will be getting its first Tim Hortons. And really, isn't that the best news you've heard all day? And before you go, it's time when I answer a question from a fan of the show who supports China Uncensored on the crowdfunding website Patreon. Ranak Chadwal asks, I saw an ADV China video where they said China knows VPNs are operating inside the country and are allowing them to exist. Why do you think they're doing this? Well, you see, the Chinese Communist Party worked hard to build the system of government surveillance and internet censorship for the good of the people. The Great Firewall of China is there for a reason, to keep the Chinese internet walled off from the rest of the internet. But then people just use VPNs to get around it. So irresponsible. That's why the party started a major crackdown on them, and decided to replace them with state-backed versions. It's all to create a more harmonious internet without all the pollution of alternative facts, such as the truth. Another reason is that the regime knows that if it completely blocked VPNs, foreigners and foreign companies wouldn't stand for it, and they'd leave China. So they'd rather just let people use VPNs, but only the kind the Chinese government can control, and maybe monitor. Thanks for your question. So, why am I answering questions on the show? It's because a lot of advertisers don't dare to work with a show that criticizes the Chinese Communist Party. So, we rely on support from viewers like you on the crowdfunding website Patreon. Answering your questions on the show is one of my ways of saying thank you. So head over to patreon.com/China Uncensored to find out how you can keep China uncensored. Thanks for watching. Once again, I'm your host, Chris Chappell. See you next time.